Welcome to RFL Tuesday night. Let me know out there if you guys cannot hear me, but we should be good to go. RFL Tuesday night, a little bit of a different time than normal. Obviously, the postponement of the 9 o'clock game kind of threw me off a little bit. I was originally anticipating that was the 7 o'clock game. So either way, it kind of works out nicely. The 9 o'clock game has been postponed. I believe that will be premier game later on this week. But keep an eye out for that. But for those of you that are joining in, having just watched the San Antonio Dreadnoughts defeat the Austin Armadillos, handing the Armadillos their first loss of the season, I appreciate you tuning in. I'm going to try to. I don't know if it's going to work out, but I have reached out to the winning head coach of tonight's matchup, and we'll try to see if I can get him to come on, do a little post-game press conference, post-game interview with him, but we shall see. So week 3 is here, and it's unfortunate because I was not originally anticipating this Armadillos Dreadnoughts game to be before we actually went live. And so now that the game has actually happened, we know the result, it kind of throws off a little bit where I was headed. But it works out simply because the points that I'm going to make here in a little bit are worrisome. And if we can get Frankie to come on, great. If not, I'll go into a little bit more of that Dreadnoughts Armadillos game in just a couple minutes. But there are some points. There are some things that I want to point out for several teams right now in the RFL. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on what you think. We'll get into a little contender, pretender. There's some teams out there that are still undefeated. There's some teams out there that haven't got a win yet. And so I want to get your thoughts on what you think. Actually, you know what? It looks like I do think we're going to have head coach Frankie of the San Antonio Dreadnoughts. Let's see if we can get him here. Frankie, can you hear me?
Yo, what's good? Can you hear me?
Hey, I got you loud and clear, man. So I guess I'll start off by saying congratulations. 2-1 is a lot better than 1-2. Anytime you can get a win against a divisional opponent, I know that is a huge step in the right direction. So I guess tell me your thoughts about the team's performance tonight.
Well, all I can say is all aboard. But man, our team, they're just stepping up what they need to. I mean, obviously week 2 was a disaster. 0 points, shutout, man. It was on my fault. I was trying to run the same playbook that I had built for Perk and Simmons being in, and I was like, yeah, that's not gonna work. All right, that playbook was designed for like speed back, so I was like, so I had to switch everything up. So I had to make a new playbook and everything, and design plays that are made for the guys that we do have. And man, like you saw, or everyone who was watching, I'm
Oh, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, yeah, I got you.
My bad. I was saying, I'm grateful to have the team that I have. The players that we have, man, they're stepping up when we need them to, man. It's like that's huge, especially against this. Like you said, this is a division game. We needed it. Our guys are down. We can't afford any losses. Our first 3 games are all division rivals, so it's like we needed to get. We wanted all 3, obviously, but 2 out of the 3, we'll take any day, and we're just happy to at least be a 2-1 despite all the injuries we had.
So you mentioned the issues with, I don't want to say issues, but the changing of the playbooks, obviously with the injuries to Perk and to Simmons, having to look in different directions. You want to take us into like what some of that decision was, like what playbook you were using with those guys in the game versus what you ended up going with now that those guys are not there, and kind of what you saw that made you lead to that decision?
No, yeah. We were pretty much running like the Miami offense, and then I was like, so I had to switch out off that because, like, if you know the real team, how they have A Chain, like they got plays built for him with his speed. So I was like, that's perfect for not perfect for Gilliam. It's like he couldn't get it going either, and then the rest of the offense either. So that was just bad. So like I said, we just switched playbooks and made some formation subs. I feel like we probably could have done better, but I think it's more credit also to the Dillos defense. Like they were shutting down like the whole receivers again. Like even KJ, you see how much they had them doubled up to the fact that they let Weathersby go off to the left on the streak there. So like I was saying, I was like, I think Roland had his game plan set to you know defend deep. We can't really get any deep pass plays. So credit to him for holding us down like that. And no, yeah, like I said, I feel like I don't know if I'm done with this, offensive playbook search. Like I want to keep looking around until we find good ones. Like I still have some others in mind, but I got to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think I can speak from my experience. It's interesting to hear you say some of the things that you're saying, because I can agree and I can attest to some of those struggles, right? There were some changes made right before the season started, some changes made even after week one, and even some slight changes made after week two. So there's a lot of tweaking, there's a lot of fine tuning. The benefit that we have right now is that we can pick whatever playbook we want every single week. If we want to, we can pick
Yes.
a different playbook every single week. Now that's great because you can mix and match based on your opponent and all those things. However, we don't have the ability to kind of simulate and run tests on those particular playbooks with our actual teams in the actual file. So it gets really tricky at times. Um, and a lot of times, and I'll get into this a little bit later, when I was mentioning earlier about there's some teams at the top and there's some teams at the bottom. Um, and I just don't think that they necessarily deserve to be where they are, albeit at the top or at the bottom. And I think a lot of that has to do with, like you said, and what I've seen, it's difficult right now to try to find the perfect playbook. And the good news is it's an 18-week season. There are no automatic wins. So we're going to be able to do a lot of research in season and a lot of tests in season. And hopefully things work out more often than not. But I certainly think the team played really well. Next week, you're going to get Simmons back. So that'll be good. So you'll have him um, coming back, and that game will be against the Boston Shamrocks. That'll be another home game for you guys. Your third home game in the first 4 weeks, and then in week 5, you will get Perk back for the home game against the Pioneers. So looking at next week's matchup against the Shamrocks, getting Simmons back, but not getting Perk back. Have you given a lot of thought into switching playbooks again, or maybe letting it ride with what you have now?
Um. So like this playbook I had picked, also to fit uh Simmons as well, because Simmons is, I would say, is like almost pretty much just like Weathersby, but I think Simmons is a little bit quicker. So I think it's gonna work out better for Simmons where Weathersby is playing. Um, I mean, Weathersby is stepping up for us right now, but obviously we see all these injuries happening. We need depth. So me, I'm always putting guys in and out of certain formations. Like if you pay attention, like Cam Jones is not in every single down that is played on the offense. It's like there are some formations where I have him sit down for a bit because, like, I see all these injuries happening. Man, it's just it's brutal.
Yeah.
Even with the injuries, fighters turned down, like it's still happening. So I was like, man, I really need to get some playing time to everybody and Deffen. But yeah, Simmons coming back. That's gonna be big. We just want to get him going. Build his player up. He's our rookie, and like I said, we just want to. I'll probably stick to this playbook for now. Scored decent enough. I always say like the lack of Simmons and Perk. I think if they do come back, this playbook might work out even better for us.
So what playbook? So it was Miami originally, and what did you end up going with? What was this one?
Denver.
Okay. So I could see where that logic stands, right? Like a little bit more of a power ground game as opposed to the Miami and the speed and the versatility out of the backfield. All right, so we've got Simmons coming back week 4, Perk coming back week 5. Then
Yeah,
you've got
now we even know about Cam Jones. Like I see the guys talking about it also. So
yeah. Any word on that? Do we have any word yet or no?
no, still looking into it here.
Yeah, we'll get breaking news on we might get breaking news on the Cam Jones injury right now. So yeah, that would be a whole nother wrench. Like yes, the injuries are not as bad as they were in week 1. Obviously, there have been some tweaks and some fine tuning going on behind the scenes, which I think everybody appreciates. However, it doesn't mean that they don't happen. So hopefully it's not serious. Oh, it looks like CC saying he was actually in on that onside kick.
So yeah, I saw that he wasn't in on the onside kick. I went back to look at it. I was like, yeah, he was lined up at the very top. But someone pointed out that during the stat screen, as you're scrolling on KJ's name, he still has the little injury icon next to his profile picture. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I'm going with the benefit that, like, if I saw him on the onside kick, I would hope that he's healthy for this game. I mean, for going forward. Hopefully.
Let's see if we can see if we can't get an update. I know Mix is probably going through and doing post game photos and everything. I'll see if we can't.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
I would imagine if he came in for the onside kick that he's fine. But to your point, I do think it's a little bit weird that going through the stats screen, he would have the injury icon because he did come back. Maybe that just comes up because he got hurt during the game. I don't know. I don't remember if I've ever seen that. I'd have to go back and look at some of our games. Like I know week 1, Miles got hurt and he came back, but I don't remember at the end of the game if he had that injury icon or not. I guess that's interesting. I'll see if I can get an update from Rob as he's in there right now. I've already reached out to message him. I don't know if he'll see it. I know he's busy. Or maybe once he's done, he'll pop in here anyway and we can get an update for you. But I guess I'll let you go, Frankie. I know you probably want to hop in and maybe talk to the guys, give them a good attaboy. And
oh yeah, we hopped on that right away.
yeah, well, good for you. Congratulations. I know 2-1 feels a lot better than 1-2, especially after the tough loss to the divisional rival Voyagers last week. I know this divisional win is certainly going to feel pretty good for the rest of the night, at least. So go ahead and enjoy it. Congratulations to you and the squad, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, bud?
Appreciate it. Again, all aboard.
You got it. All right, Frankie. Take care, man. So there you go. Coach Frankie of the San Antonio Dreadnoughts. They were able to pick up the win today, giving the Austin Armadillos their first loss of the season. Dreadnoughts 31, Armadillos 23. So remains to be seen what may or may not come of the KJ injury. I tend to think that he's going to be fine and it's not a big deal. Simply because he was back out there apparently for the onside kick. I did not catch that. But it appears that KJ will be fine. I sure hope so. Anytime you have game breakers and you have, league superstars like that, I love him or hate them, you don't want to see those guys get hurt. And I think if there's any team that has already in the first month of the season seen the impact that an injury can have to one of your key players, it is the San Antonio Dreadnoughts. So certainly we're hoping that KJ is going to be fine. If I do get any word on that, I will be sure to share that immediately with you guys, as I will be here with you probably up until 9:00. So probably just about another half an hour with you here. We'll see how things go, maybe even a little bit later. But also, as you can see at the bottom of your screen here, I have gone through, there were some more key injuries this week. So last week I showed you a bunch of guys that got hurt during week 2. Every injury that you see scrolling down at the bottom of your screen here, these are all injuries that took place during week 2, right? So this does not include any injuries from last night, and it does not include, obviously, any injuries from tonight. But all of the injuries that you see at the bottom of your screen here are new injuries that occurred during week 2. And there's some big ones. You look at the Portland Snowhawks. They've got an outside linebacker out for the season. Right? Like Alex Gonzalez is out for the year. 27-week injury, he won't return. And that's devastating to lose a guy for the season, and we're only in week 2. You look at the Huskies, right? Like Michael Pratt, big playmaker for their defense. He's out for the next 5 games. CP, obviously sees it on the bottom of the screen here. The LA Crusaders are going to be without Marlon Marshall. Dislocated his elbow. He'll be out for 3 more games. Right? So we're seeing the injury bug hit a lot of teams. It's becoming a big deal. And it's just more and more emphasizing the depth and the importance of depth on your roster. It's a long season. There's no automatic wins. In years past, during the automatic win week, all the injuries were turned off, or the XPs were turned off. I want to say, no, they couldn't have turned injuries off because not every game was on an automatic win. But you didn't see as many injuries. I feel like this year will be the best year that we've ever seen in the RFL. I also think it's the year where we're going to see quite a few injuries. You're going to have teams going into week 13, week 14, going into the postseason with key contributors that might not be there. Do not be surprised if we get to week 14 or 15 and you see a guy get hurt and he's out for 5 weeks and it's a playoff team. You might have a playoff team going into the first round of the playoffs without one of their key players, hoping that they can get a win because he'll return for the divisional round. Like, those are the kind of things that we've already seen them happen in years past, but I really believe this year we're going to see it more and more. Guys are going to get fatigued. Guys are going to get hurt. It's as simple as that. So congratulations again to the San Antonio Dreadnoughts on the victory as they move to 2-1 and the Austin Armadillos fall to 2-1. So I wanted to start the show off talking about some undefeated teams. And originally I had the Austin Armadillos in this grouping, right? Because I had planned on the show going live before the game. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So here I am on the fly adjusting a little bit because now the Armadillos are no longer undefeated. But we've got the Cincinnati Hogs, the London Bulldogs, the Dallas Desperados, the St. Louis Aviators, and the Brooklyn Bulls are all undefeated, all currently 2-0. And the reason that I wanted to talk about these teams in particular is one, they're undefeated, right? They're 2-0. But I need you guys to understand that not every 2-0 is built the same. Not every 2-0 team is really worthy of necessarily being referred to as a contender, right? And I know that we're in week 3. There's no record, there's no team in the standings that you can unequivocally say that's just the way that it's going to be all year. I think you can look at every single one of these 5 teams, and I really want to include the Armadillos in here because it was part of the point here. You can look at every single one of these teams, and outside of the Bulldogs, I could make an argument that none of those other teams would even make the playoffs, right? But yet they're starting 2-0, and they look pretty good. We saw the Austin Armadillos, even tonight in a loss. You could say they looked pretty good. Jordy Johnson looks like the front runner for MVP. I mean, typically you look at quarterbacks when you're talking about the MVP, but I mean, I have a hard time not thinking about Jordy Johnson right now as a front runner to win the MVP. But the problem that I had with the Armadillos, and we saw this play out tonight. So what I wanted to talk about with the Armadillos was, yes, they were 2-0. And yes, Jordy Johnson looked really good. And Chumlee looked really good. But you're not going to win a Relo Bowl, and you're not going to get into the back end of the season and have continued success if you cannot run the ball. And the Austin Armadillos cannot run the ball at all. They were 2-0 coming into tonight's matchup, and they had a total of 82 yards rushing in 2 games. And tonight, Levi Dixon had 11 carries for 15 yards. So in 3 games, the Armadillos have under 100 yards total rushing in 3 games. Now, if you look at the other teams that are 2-0, right? They're right there on your screen. Of all those other teams that were 2-0, the next closest team in terms of fewest yards rushing was the Brooklyn Bulls at 175. So while the Armadillos were 2-0 with only 82 yards rushing, the Brooklyn Bulls were the second worst, and they had basically 100 yards more. They had more than double the amount of rushing yards that the Armadillos had. So I get wanting to look at the standings and wanting to look at records, but a 2-0 team that cannot run the ball is not the same as a 2-0 team like the Bulldogs, for example. When you get into the latter part of the season, when you get into the playoffs, you need to be able to run the ball. You can win games without scoring rushing touchdowns, but you need to be able to run the ball because you need to be able to control the clock. If you can't run the ball, you're probably going to lose the time of possession. And if you lose time of possession and you're not running the ball effectively, then the only chance you really give yourself to win games regularly is if your quarterback balls out. And that's just not a position that I think any GM wants to be in. Nobody wants to be one-dimensional. And I'm sorry, but right now, there's no team in the RFL that is more one-dimensional than the Austin Armadillos. They have the number one wide receiver in the league in terms of yards and in terms of touchdowns. Number one in the entire league in yards receiving and number one in the entire league in receiving touchdowns. And that was prior to tonight's game. He added 2 more tonight. What'd Jordy go for tonight? 6 catches, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So in order for the Armadillos to continue to find success, they've got to figure out something with the running game. And I don't know, getting back to what Frankie and I were talking about earlier on, maybe that's something in the playbook. But it's hard to go away from a playbook when you're having so much success in the passing game. And you've played 3 games and you won 2 of them. I understand the choices and the decisions are difficult. And so I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the Armadillos' chances if they cannot run the ball. Try to look more at Johnson's stats here. Yeah, it wasn't. Sorry, it wasn't. I said touchdowns, QPOC. It wasn't touchdowns. I meant to say receptions. Jordy Johnson is first in the RFL in receptions and first in the RFL in yards. And they can't run the ball to save their life. Like Levi Dixon had 11 carries for 15 yards. I could have done that. I could have literally left my house, left my studio here in Clearwater, Florida, got on a plane to San Antonio and rushed for more than 15 yards on 11 carries. You can't win games that way. I mean, you can win games that way, but I don't think you can win championships that way. Right? Like it looks great, right? Chicks dig the long ball. Jordy Johnson is in everyone's living room. Like right now, there's a 12-year-old boy who is asking his mom and dad if he can get a Jordy Johnson poster for his birthday. Like those are conversations that are happening. They're not asking for Levi Dixon posters. You know how much a Levi Dixon Topps trading card is going for right now? You pay me $10 and I'll take it. The Armadillos are surprising everybody. I don't think anyone anticipated them being 2-0. But without a run game, they're going to find themselves in trouble. And I think you saw part of that tonight. In fact, I know you saw some of that tonight. 15 yards on 11 carries from your guy. That's not going to win championships. And then the other team that's on this list that I'm a little bit worried about as well is the Cincinnati Hogs. So the Hogs are 2-0. And quite honestly, I don't know how you can be 2-0 when you are 25% on third down conversions. The Cincinnati Hogs have only converted 25% of their third downs. They've got over 200 yards rushing, so they're controlling the clock. Time of possession's good. Running game looks good, but they're only 25% conversions on third down. Now, on the flip side, back to the Armadillos were 2-0. But again, a big reason why they were 2-0, they were 72% on third down conversions. 72%. That's insane. Every other team. So the Armadillos were at 72% third down conversions. The Desperados were the only other team that was under 50. They were at 43%. So the Hogs at 25% were 18% lower than the next undefeated team on this list. And I believe after the Armadillos at 72%, I think the second place team in third down conversion was like 59%. So you're talking, a double-digit drop. There's no way that you can sustain over an 18-week season, over a 17-game season. There's no way that you can sustain 72% on third down. You cannot do it. It will not happen. Somebody take a receipt right now, and at the end of the year, remind me, and we'll look back at third down conversion rate. And I promise you, the number one team in the RFL will be nowhere near 72% on the season. And that's where the Armadillos were. So I look at the Armadillos and I look at the Hogs and I say, I don't think they can do this. The Bulldogs, absolutely not surprised. The Desperados, not surprised. The Bulls, it's only 2 games. So am I surprised? No. The Aviators, I'm a little surprised. Right? The Aviators got rid of Marquise Washington, who we'll get to in a minute. They get rid of Marquise Washington, and they start the year 2-0 with Kyle Bain. I don't think any of us saw that coming. No, and I think that this is the point, Kai Cash. Like, I don't know if I were to poll the audience right now, how many of you think the Hogs and Aviators are going to make the playoffs? I don't think many of you are. I don't think many of you are going to make that, make that claim. But with a quarterback that you had no idea what you were going to get in Kyle Bain, they look like you would have never known if you didn't know who their quarterback was for the last 3 seasons. You would have never known. You would have looked at this Aviators team and you would have said, oh, they started 2-0. Oh, they started 2-0 a couple years ago. They've got older. I don't know their old heads are going to hold up throughout the course of the season. And so when I look at these teams here that are undefeated, and I had to drop the Armadillos, obviously, because they lost tonight. I think the Bulldogs, the Desperados, and you could make a claim for the Bulls. Right? Like, let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago, right? Like, let's go look at the what is it? The ARC East, right? Like, if we go back, remember, look at the ARC East. That's where the Bulls are. We were talking about preseason, they were projected to go 12-5. So the fact that they're 2-0 right now shouldn't come as that great of a surprise. And if you look, they're 2-0 with another team that's in the division. Right? But then you look at a team like the Aviators, who are 2-0, and preseason they were projected to go 3-14. So obviously that can't happen. There's no way that the Aviators, as much as we might not have thought they would start the year 2-0, there's no way that they go 1-14 in the final 15 games. That just won't happen. And then you look at the Desperados, right? So we go to the NRC South. The Desperados were preseason projected to go 5-12. They've already got 2 wins. Could they still go 5-12? Maybe. But they're looking much better than that 5-12 record might indicate. And then last of the undefeateds here, if we look at the Cincinnati Hogs in the ARC North. Again, the trend here, guys, outside of the ARC East, these teams that are undefeated at 2-0 were projected to be 4-13, 2-15. That's not a lot of wins. And so I said this at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to say it again because we're starting to see it really happen. There's going to be some major shock value in the RFL come week 13, 14, 15, because we are going to get to a point around that time frame where it becomes clear that teams you expect to be in the postseason are not going to be there, because you're going to have a team like the Bulls surprising everyone, or the Aviators, or the Hogs, or the Desperados, or the Armadillos, or the Dreadnoughts once they get healthy. You're going to have those teams that were not anticipated to be double-digit win squads. And suddenly they find themselves at the 10 or 11 win mark, and they're looking at a playoff berth. Meanwhile, there's going to be other teams that find themselves scratching their head, wondering, how did we not make the playoffs? I've had this conversation. I've said this about our team. I have no clue what this season is going to look like. Our schedule is hard. 4 or 5 of the teams that we play, we've never played before because it's cross conference. So you never know what that's going to look like. We've got playbook switching on a weekly basis. You never know what that's going to look like. If you can find one that you like and roll with it, great. But we're going to see, you're going to see teams that, look at the Voyagers. They struggled in week 1. They got a win in week 2, but they only scored 10 points. If you ask Coach Baker right now, he's not happy with that. He's not excited. He's not saying, oh, yay, I'm really glad that we're 1-1 right now. There's going to be teams that end up disappointed. Is there a scenario where the Voyagers don't make the playoffs? Yeah. Is there a scenario where the Miners don't make the playoffs? Yes. Is there a scenario where the Red Dragons don't make it? Where the Huskies don't make it? The Thunderbirds, the Diablos, like these are all teams that you would assume are in the postseason. But I promise you, we're going to get to the back end of the season, and by week 12 or 13 or 14, we're already going to know, that team ain't got no shot. It's not going to surprise me if we get to week 14 and suddenly the Atlanta Thunderbirds are eliminated. The Portland Snowhawks are eliminated. Or the Sacramento Miners are eliminated. I don't know. But I think we're going to see it. And it's, I don't want, selfishly, I don't want to see it for my squad. However, it's fantastic for the league. And as a guy who is, league first, it's fantastic for the league if something like that were to happen. If the Columbus Explorers and the Sacramento Miners and the Houston Voyagers don't make the playoffs, and instead you've got the Tampa Bay Tigers and the Brooklyn Bulls and the Cincinnati Hogs or the St. Louis Aviators or the Boston Shamrocks, like, that's so good for the league. And again, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but it's going to happen. All right, so undefeated teams, we'll see how they fare. Obviously, we are now into week 3, so it remains to be seen what the Hogs, Bulldogs, Desperados, Aviators, and Bulls will do in week 3. And so right now we started week 3 with 6 undefeated teams. We're already down to 5. I guess, how many undefeated teams do you think, before I move on here, I'll pose this question out to you guys in the chat. How many undefeated teams will there be remaining at the end of week 3? Will there still be 5? Will there be 4? Will there be 3? Will there be 2? What do you guys think? Number of undefeated teams remaining after week 3. Perk says only 3 teams will be left undefeated at the end of the week. I haven't honestly looked at the schedule to see who all those teams are facing, but I could certainly envision a scenario. CP says 2. I haven't even looked. I forget. Are any of these teams facing each other? That would make the decision a lot easier. Kai Cash saying 1. So right now there's 5 teams that are 2-0. Kai Cash says 4 of them are going to lose. And I would Hogs versus the Cougars, so that's not Desperados versus Explorers. So, okay, you could envision a scenario where the Hogs lose. Cougars aren't going to roll over. You could certainly envision a scenario where the Desperados lose to the Explorers. The Bulldogs and the Gunners, that's probably the one that, Kai Cash says 1 team will remain. That's probably the one. The Bulldogs will beat the Gunners. The Aviators have the Red Dragons. That's a divisional matchup in the ARC West. The Red Dragons are coming off of a loss to us. I could see them looking to bounce back. So, as crazy as it might be, and then you've got the last one, the Bulls versus the Barons. I think that one could go either way. I would probably say that at the end of this week, there'll be 2. Looking at those matchups, I would say 2. I could see 1 more so than I could see 3. Well, I don't know. I feel like 2 is a strong play because I feel like the Bulldogs are good for it. And then either the Hogs are maybe good for it against the Cougars, or the Bulls are good for it against the Barons, or the Aviators are good for it against the Red Dragons. Those are all kind of toss-up games for me. I don't envision a scenario where all 5 remain because I don't think that the Desperados beat the Explorers. I think the Explorers, this is like a get right week for the Explorers. I feel like they had that oddity of a game in week 1 against the Tampa Bay Tigers, which they needed a 2-point conversion at the buzzer in order to win, which nobody saw coming when you were watching that game at halftime. And then they struggled. They kind of went back and forth last week against the Steamers. Ultimately, they couldn't pull it out. And now, look, I can make an argument that the Explorers have probably had the hardest schedule so far. When you start the year against the Tigers and then you go Steamers, that's pretty tough. I mean, that's probably about as tough as us starting with the Bulldogs and then going to the Red Dragons, both of which on the road. And then our game this week is on the road. So when I look at our squad, we haven't had a home game, and we won't have a home game until week 4. Our first 3 games of the year, all on the road, all against good teams. The Bulldogs, the Red Dragons, and the Condors. All teams that think they have a shot to win their division. I know a lot of people want to, crown the Snowhawks in that NRC West, but I don't think, the Condors and the Crusaders, they're not rollovers. They're not rollovers at all. All right, so 2-0 teams, 5 remain. How many will remain at the end of the week? I think the safe bet is either 2 or 3. I don't think it'll be 1, and I certainly don't think it'll be 5 or 4. So if I'm a betting man, I'm either betting on 2 of them or 3 of them. That's it. But you talk about that Chicago Cougars Cincinnati Hogs game, and I'll segue into my my next point here. I don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation in Chicago, and I feel like it's not been addressed. It's not been talked about. And obviously we're 2 weeks into the year, but it was said, it was verbalized, it was no secret at the beginning of the year that when the Cougars made the trade to acquire Ramos, it was to potentially be their starting quarterback. Now, I understand you're not going to immediately jump into that. Obviously, Jacob McCall has only been in the locker room for the offseason, but he was the key piece in a deal that saw Geno Gannon leave your facility. And so you owe it to yourself to give him an opportunity. That said, I think a lot of us were surprised with the Ramos trade. And then after the trade, the confirmation that we might have ourselves a little bit of a quarterback controversy here, or certainly a position battle. And so now when you look at the Cougars and they have, Rob has been fairly realistic and fairly open about his expectations for the season, in that if they make the playoffs, great. If they don't, that's fine. They've got 3 first-round draft picks. I promise you that if they don't make the playoffs this year, I would be shocked if they're not making the playoffs regularly as of next year and on. Certainly 2 years and on. Because the guys that you get, the talent that you're going to be able to get with 3 first-round draft picks, those guys are going to help you. Certainly, if not immediately, they're going to help you by year 2. And so, what if you get to the midpoint of this season and McCall's not looking all that great? Like, if you go back and you watch that game, I'm drawing a blank on not the tracker there. If you go back and you watch that Cougars game, the Sentinels, If you go back and you watch that game against the Sentinels, they had their chances to win that game. And in my opinion, the reason they didn't win that game was because they couldn't convert in the second half. They couldn't convert on important third downs in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter. They couldn't consistently get the ball across midfield. And they just, drive after drive, would stall out short of midfield, punt the ball away, not converting on third downs. And they just kind of let Orlando hang around. And I feel like you've got to have the ability. I talked a lot about third down conversion percentages and what it means and how important it is for teams. You've got to be able to, when you have a lead in the second half of a game, you've got to be able to convert on third down. Rob knows that I'm not saying anything he doesn't already know. Go back to that Explorers Tigers game in week 1. The Explorers were up, 31-0? That's a little bit different because you kind of get a little lax and on your heels a little bit. I can understand not necessarily converting on every third down when you're up 31-0. But I feel like the Cougars should have won that game. I don't think there's anything that the Sentinels were doing that scared me. And the Cougars had the lead late in the game, and they just couldn't convert. Every time they got close to midfield, they stalled. If they could have gotten, in the third quarter of that game, if they could have gotten one third down conversion when they were at midfield, if they could have gotten one extra first down, they'd probably win that game. One third down conversion from the 50-yard line gets you 4 more downs, and you're basically in field goal range. And if you're in field goal range, you make the kick, you win the game. And so I don't know what Rob's thinking. I have no idea. I've not talked to him about it. I have no idea what he might be thinking. What I do know is that he made a trade for Ramos, and then after the trade said there could be a quarterback, position battle. So if that's the case, when does it happen? Because right now the Cougars are 0-2. What's interesting is they've got another game against the Hogs, and this is week 3. They've already played the Hogs in week 1. So 3 weeks into the season, they're already going to have both of their matchups with the Hogs. Are they going to be 0-3? And then in week 4, they've got the Voyagers. Are they going to be 0-4? If you start the season 0-4 and you traded for another quarterback, there has to be at least a small part of you that is thinking about making a move. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with him if he does it, or you agree with him if he doesn't do it. There has to be like the devil on one shoulder saying, don't do it. Don't do it. But on the other side, you're 0-4. What's the worst that could happen? You lose a game? Well, that's already happened 4 times. Now, again, I don't think it's in. I would be surprised if there was a line on this. If you could go on FanDuel and find a prop on how many games Ramos starts for the Cougars this year, I would be shocked if that number was anything more than 3. And that's only because if they get to a point where they're officially eliminated from the playoffs, I could then envision a scenario where Rob would put Ramos in just because. Why not? If you get to week 12 or week 13 or week 14 and the Cougars are officially eliminated and they have no chance of making the playoffs, could you envision Ramos going in and starting week 15, 16, 17, 18 just to see what the guy has? Yeah. I think that would be the right thing to do. Right? Because we don't really have the ability to switch mid-game. So at that point, in a perfect world, you'd probably what you'd like to do is you'd like to make those switches mid-game because you'd like to see how the two players fare against the same team, right? Like I'd love to see McCall go out there and play the first half against the Hogs and then Ramos go out there and play the second half against the Hogs just so that you can compare the two against the same opponent. That's ideal. Unfortunately, that's not a luxury that we have. So if you get to a point where you've got nothing to play for and you're basically playing for draft pick position and you've got a guy on your roster that you've already openly said could start for you, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't at least entertain it. Now, all that being said, I think McCall is the better option for this team. I don't think McCall was bad on the Black Knights. Let's be perfectly clear here. McCall didn't get run out of town because he sucked. He didn't get run out of town because London didn't like him. He got traded because Gino Gannon became available when the Cougars realized they weren't going to be able to afford him. And spoiler alert, for those of you that didn't already see, the Black Knights just re-upped Gino Gannon. I think it was 6 years, $358 million. Right? So if you're the Cougars, you wanted McCall back in that deal. If not, you could have found, there could have been other teams. But I think McCall gives this team as good of an opportunity as certainly as Ramos does. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I don't know if we'll hear more about it. I don't know. I think the interesting thing will be at the end of week 4 because they've got the Hogs this week and then at the Voyagers in week 4. And if you get through week 4 and you're 0-4 and you haven't won a game and you're looking at the Bisons in week 5, the Bisons right now are a dumpster fire. Right? Like, maybe you could beat them even with Ramos instead of McCall. So hypothetically, the Cougars start 0-4, right? Let's say they lose to the Hogs this week, and then they lose on the road to the Houston Voyagers in week 4. Do you think that the Chicago Cougars with Ramos could still beat Oklahoma City? I think it's possible. I think it's possible that it doesn't matter who their quarterback is. They could still beat Oklahoma City. And so if that's the case, maybe you roll the dice. You're 0-4. Why not? Or the opposite side, and I could totally see this too, is no, Oklahoma City is a get right game. I want my guy out there. And right now my guy is McCall. I want to win this game. I don't want to go 0-5. I'm not going to take the chance of starting a backup and maybe losing. I want McCall. I want the win. I want to be 1-4. Right. So there's two ways that you could look at that. But again, that's potentially 2 weeks from now. If McCall gets to start this week and the Cougars go out there and they knock off the Hogs and the Hogs are no longer undefeated and the Cougars look good in doing so and McCall looks good in victory, everything that I said could be wasted breath. But we don't know. And we won't know until at least this weekend when we find out what the rest of the league looks like. Can the Cougars knock off the Hogs? It's odd that they play the same team twice in 3 weeks. So we won't know until later in the week. But one thing that we do know, and I just mentioned this a minute ago, is that we got some quarterbacks making bank. We got some quarterbacks cashing checks right now. Geno Gannon mentioned 6 years, $358 million, I believe it was. The day after Marquise Washington re-upped with the Dallas Desperados for 6 years, $360 million. $60 million a year, the largest contract in the history of the NFL or the RFL. And I'm going to say this. Dallas fans are excited. I get it. You got Marquise Washington for 6 years. And Black Knights fans are excited because you got Geno Gannon for 6 years. You could even make the argument that Geno Gannon for less money is better. Right? Like, I'm a little bit surprised Geno Gannon getting less money. He was the younger, I believe he's the younger of the two. He's a year younger. And I believe was 1 or 2 overalls higher. The advantage that I believe Washington had was that he was X Factor, but with abilities off, it doesn't really matter. Gannon was superstar and Washington was X Factor. But I think when I look at this, I look at a quarterback that isn't Geno Gannon and isn't Marquise Washington. And I look at a team that has got to be thrilled when you see the contracts that these two guys just got. And if you are Coach Davis and you are the San Diego Red Dragons, you have to be thrilled that these guys just got $60 million a year. And you were able to, just a couple months ago, sign Anthony Savoy for 45. Like, save $15 million a year and have Anthony Savoy instead of Geno Gannon. Sign me up. Right? Like, sign me up for that. Anthony Savoy has already won a Relo Bowl. Neither one of these guys have. Like, I think what the Red Dragons were able to do in the offseason and re-up Anthony Savoy for 7 years is a bargain. And I think everyone in that San Diego front office right now is thrilled to see these guys getting $60 million a year, knowing that they saved a ton of money in AAV and they have their guy locked up for just as long. And I mean, are we splitting hairs here on quarterbacks? Right? Like, who would you rather have for the next 6 years? Anthony Savoy or Geno Gannon? And why? And then if you told me that you rather Geno Gannon, but I told you that you could save $15 million to go get another player, would you still prefer Geno Gannon? Because I don't think you would. I think they're this close to begin with. And the fact that you could save $15 million a year and take Savoy, I think that puts it over the top. Like, I look at that deal that the Red Dragons made, 7 years, was it 307 years? I think it's 320. So let's do this. 320 divided by 7, 45.7 million a year. I mean, you can do a lot with $15 million a year. $15 million a year is the difference between maybe your team being a division winner, bow out in the first round, or your team making a run at the Relo Bowl. If you play your cards right. So congratulations to Geno Gannon. Congratulations to Marquise Washington. But really, in my opinion, congratulations to Coach Davis and the San Diego Red Dragons. And I'm curious what that means for the quarterback position moving forward, because we don't really have a lot of guys that are going to, push the market, so to speak. Like, when you look at, let's try to pull this up real quick. When I look at these guys and I look at the quarterback position, right? Let's see, years left. So when I look at quarterbacks and years left, there's no one here that is breaking the bank. Trey Mason, the Lumberjacks, he's on the final year of a 5-year deal. He's 32 years old. He's not getting 30 million a year. He's not getting half of what Gannon and Washington just got. Most of the other quarterbacks that are free agents at the end of this season are backups, right? Like, with the exception of the Diablos. So the Diablos probably have, after the re-signing of Geno Gannon and Marquise Washington, the Mexico City Diablos, I would say, I don't even think it's debatable. I would say they easily have the best quarterback that is a pending free agent in Lane Kearney. But Lane Kearney's 31 years old. Geno Gannon was 24. Marquise Washington is 25. That's why they got $60 million. So Lane Kearney is not going to get that. Lane Kearney won't even get the 45. Lane Kearney won't get the 45 that Anthony Savoy got. And Lane Kearney's an 89 overall. He's an X factor, not that it really matters, at least for this season. I'll be honest, I can't imagine we go back to abilities. I think something crazy would have to happen for the RFL to go back to using abilities. I believe all of the coaches prefer it. And I think the hardest sell for us historically was to get Smitty on board. And I think Smitty has seen so far this season alone that the gameplay is a lot different. So I just don't envision a scenario where we would ever go back. I don't know why. Plus, I also think it takes a lot of the work out of, trying to figure out who deserves it and who doesn't deserve it. I do think they're important. I do think the dev traits are important. It's important to have X factors simply because it helps their development. You earn XP quicker, you develop quicker. So I do want guys to be X factor, but I certainly think we're not far away from getting to a point where we have a rule basically where once you hit 30 years old, if you're an X factor at 30, you lose it because you're never going to upgrade, right? Like a 30-year-old X factor is not going to, chances are is not going to get an upgrade in season unless they started off with a good chunk. It's hard once you're at 30 to get an upgrade in season. And because we don't roll over seasons, you start every year with a new player. Your XP doesn't roll over unless you happen to get lucky and you build a guy and the guy has a lot of XP when you create him. You might not get those upgrades. So it's a waste. Like I don't think any of us want 30-year-old guys with X Factor. It's a waste. They're not going to upgrade. Like give the X Factor to a 25-year-old who's an 87 overall who's coming off a Pro Bowl year. Give it to him. Right? Like that's the guy that's actually developing and developing quickly, because clearly if he's young and he's already getting those accolades, he's developing quickly. He's performing at a young age. Those are the guys that I would like to see it. All right, like get rid of 30-year-old X Factors, gone. If you're 31 years old and you're an X Factor, you go to star. At that point, it doesn't even matter, right? If you're not going to upgrade at X Factor, you're not going to upgrade at star. So once you hit 31 years old, 32 years old, you just go to normal. You just go to normal. And then you have the ability to give those X Factor dev traits, because again, the abilities don't matter. It's only going to help boost the player. So now you have the ability to take those X Factor XP boosts and give those to younger guys that might actually deserve it. So yeah, I mean, that's a quick look at some of the pending free agent quarterbacks. I mean, if I go through real quick and look at some others, do I see another one? So Matt Jones in San Antonio, again, backup. You know, he got thrust into some playing time in week 1 when Owen Jack went down, but again, backup. You know, and then everyone else you're looking at, they're all backup dudes. You got John Bales for the Condors, John Bastige for the Cougars. You got Kyle Bain. So Kyle Bain of the Aviators. He's 26 years old. He's an 81 overall. So between Kyle Bain of the Aviators, and then what do we say, Lane Kearney. I guess the interesting thing to see will be who gets more money. Kyle Bain as an 81, 26-year-old, or Lane Kearney as an 89, 32-year-old, right? An 89, 31-year-old. I would imagine Lane Kearney is going to get quite a bit more. But how long are the Diablos going to sign him for? At 31 years old. Does he have 3 more years in him? Does he get 3 years, $30 million a year? If you're the Diablos, do you try to re-sign Lane Kearney for 3 years, $30 million a year? 3-year, $90 million contract? I mean, we clearly, guys that are out there with similar overalls are going for 60 and 45 and 60 million. Obviously, those guys are a little bit younger than you, but I mean, maybe Lane Kearney wants that. I don't know. That's a conversation that Forbes is going to have. But that's pretty much it. I mean, we saw the 2 big ones. Marquise Washington and Geno Gannon are $60 million a year for the next 5 or 6 years. And I saw someone in the chat ask about this. So I can do a couple love it or shove it for you guys. I know, I don't remember who it was that was asking. I mean, I guess I can come up with some of these on the fly. Like, okay, love it or shove it. Lane Kearney gets more than a 3-year deal. He's a 31-year-old quarterback. The Diablos are in a position to win. They have a squad. But are you going to give a quarterback entering his age 32 season? Are you going to give him a 3-year deal? Are you going to give him $100 million? I don't, I don't think you do. Right? Like we spent so much time looking at the situation that the Aviators were in with Marquise Washington and the Cougars were in with Geno Gannon. It didn't take long to realize, oh boy, those guys are gone. They can't afford them. Wait, what? Miles Brock got 4 upgrade points off tonight's game? How is that even possible? I don't even know how that's possible. He would have had to, his XP to get an upgrade would have to be like 1,000. He got, you get 18,000 XP for getting 5 sacks in a season? Wow. I did not realize that. Is that new? Has that always been there? I know you get milestone, I know you get boosts for milestones like that. But you get 18,000 XP for getting 5 sacks in a season? I feel like there's 2 or 3 guys on every team that are going to get that. That's incredible. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's because he's a rookie. I mean, we'll find out. Like that's insane. I'm curious. Anyone else out there, talk to your coaches and find out. At the end of this week, there's probably going to be quite a few guys that have 5 sacks on the year. I'm curious to see, is it because he's a rookie? I think if it was only because he was a rookie, it would say because he was a rookie. Rookie 5, whatever. And his goal? Oh, you set an individual player goal. That's why. If you set an individual player goal. Okay, so there was probably at the beginning of the year, there was probably a rookie goal scenario, right? Like one of those sideline reporter type scenarios. So yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, I can pull it up right here. So we're looking at the Dreadnoughts here. So Cole Ransom, Michael Simmons, and then Miles Brock. So Miles Brock went 25th overall out of Clemson. He was a 75 overall. And he just got 4 upgrade points. So, I mean, basically, we're 2 weeks into the year, 3 weeks into the season, and if he's not an 80 overall, he's a 79. I mean, he's probably an 80 overall. And with the morale boost you get from 5 sacks and meeting your goal, he's probably getting a morale boost of 1 or 2. He's probably his playing weight right now is probably an 82 overall. He almost had 20,000 in XP from this game alone. He's an 83 overall. He went up 8 overalls in 3 weeks. We didn't have a preseason. I'm curious what other teams had scenarios with rookies like that. And Frankie had 3 first-round picks, so I assume that Frankie, you didn't have those with all of your rookies. I assume there wasn't a rookie performance goal for Michael Simmons and a rookie performance goal for Cole Ransom. I mean, that's incredible. He's a base 83 overall. So his playing overall Don't be surprised if it's even higher. I don't know what his morale boost is now, but I'm sure it's good. Team got a win at home. Dude F's around and gets 20,000 in XP in one game. I wish, Pecan, where you at? Pull the archives on that. 20,000 XP in one game. I'm going to have Smitty checking every single game for the rest of his life just so that he can try at some point in the next 20 years, try to find somebody who got 20,000 XP in one game. That is bonkers. I think I just have to stop. I don't even know what I feel like everyone else should just stop playing. Like, can we just give away the Defensive Rookie of the Year award? Okay, Brock Frederick, Garrett Evans, Austin Sanders, Elijah Walker, thanks for playing. Go home. He was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. He was the 15th defensive player taken. He wasn't even the first defensive tackle taken. Darius Donald out of Oklahoma went 19th overall to the New England Monarchs. And 6 picks later, the San Antonio Dreadnoughts drafted Aaron freaking Darnold. Aaron Donald. Darnold. I'm thinking Sam Darnold. Like, what are we talking about? Wow. Like, sometimes you get some finds in the draft. And now, granted, I mean, I guess you can't really say this was a find in the draft. It's more so just unbelievable performance in the first month of the season. 23rd player overall, second defensive tackle taken. The third player that the Dreadnoughts took, generic defensive tackle out of Clemson. So for all of you guys, and this will be a perfect segue because I wanted to start the show with this and then I didn't because I ended up having Frankie on, which again, Frankie, appreciate you still being out here. And congratulations to you, man. I wish that we had known this. I wish that this news was broken while you were on the show earlier with me, because this would, I'm mind blown. Like, I am absolutely mind blown that a guy comes in at a 75 overall and 3 weeks later, he's an 83 overall. And for setting a goal of 5 sacks, I mean, if you had 5 sacks, if at the end of the season, a dude had 5 sacks, he wouldn't be in the top 20. So like 5 sacks isn't, it's not like Frankie sat down and was like, I'm really going to make him work for this. Here's a big stretch goal here. Now, I understand he's a rookie, and I understand defensive tackles typically don't get as many sacks as DNs. Smitty says he's already the 15th best defensive tackle in the league. That is embarrassing to 31 other general managers in the league. And by 31, I really mean like 10 and then Smitty. Like, that is bad. That a guy could do that in 3 weeks of his career. Jump to become the 15th best defensive tackle in the entire league. Wow. And that's going to take me to my next point. So you guys want to talk about college series? There's a lot of kids out there. I say kids because, you talk like the college series is a big game. You guys want to talk about the college series? If you're not creating a defensive tackle, perhaps you're doing it wrong. If you're creating quarterbacks, I am here to tell you, not perhaps, you are, in fact, doing it wrong. The league needs quarterbacks. The college series does. But unfortunately for you, through no fault of your own, really, just the landscape of the league, college quarterbacks right now are not that important. Every year, every draft class has a position or two that are really important. And for the next couple of years, quarterbacks are not it. And I laugh every single time I see guys in the Discord who probably just watched their first RFL game for the first time ever, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And they're in the Discord talking about their quarterback in college. I'm like, dude, I have to bite my lip from like telling these guys, listen, dude, thanks for playing. Give me your address and I'll send you your participation trophy. Because you're not even Eminem. You do not have one shot. You do not have one opportunity. Even if you wanted to, you cannot capture it. It is going to slip. Last year alone, okay? Let's just look at last year. Last year, we saw 7 quarterbacks taken in the draft. Of those 7 quarterbacks, none of them went in the first round. There were 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 135 picks. If by chance any of those guys happen to get thrust into a situation where they might get some playing time, they're not built to succeed. It's not, okay. The Lumberjacks drafted Jordan Granger. He was the first quarterback taken. He's a 73 overall. He's probably the closest you're going to get. Okay, Jordan Granger was the second pick in the second round. After that, please hold. Tyon Nickerson, 16th pick in the second round, 48th overall to the Baltimore Gunners. Guys, I said this about Dorian Dumpster Davis, whatever it was, a couple weeks ago. Tyon Nickerson, I hope you appreciated your time in the college series. I really do. Because it's over. It's over. Right? Like, even when Jabri Jackson retires in 2 years, even if when Jabri Jackson retires, you're a 69 overall. And I understand you can probably complain about that. Listen, guys, everybody has to do it. Everybody comes in at a low overall. I will never have an ounce of sympathy for anyone who comes in at a low overall and complains about it, especially a quarterback. If there's anyone who has zero sympathy whatsoever for a quarterback balling out in college and coming in and getting disrespected at a low overall in the draft, you'll never get sympathy from me. And then we're looking at the Gunners at 48 overall took Tyon. And then Dorian Chavis, 51st overall, 19th pick in the second round to the Barons out of Miami. I mean, Chavis came in at where was I? Just lost it. Sorry, guys. A 69 overall. So the second quarterback taken in the draft was a 69 overall. The third quarterback taken in the draft was a 69 overall. To put that into perspective, the third quarterback taken 2 years ago was a 71 overall. Calvin Poole came in, I think, astronomically high. Somebody's cheating. I think he was like a 78 overall, which was mind-blowing. Miles McCain came in at a 70, which again was mind-blowingly low. But then Monty Wyatt, I believe, was the third quarterback taken. And Monty Wyatt, I believe, was a 71. So we're talking about I'm wondering what the thought process is for guys. And I'm going to stop. As much as I love Ronnie Shanahan, and he's, probably going to get a little bit of run with the Hogs. He was taken in the 4th round, which I honestly think is a steal at that point. Like, let's find Ronnie Shanahan here. Was it the 4th round? I believe it was the 4th round. No, Ronnie Shanahan, 3rd round, 85th pick overall, 3rd round. I don't have what his overall was out of the draft. Calvin Poole was a 77. Somebody says he should have been a 78. No, he should have been a 75. And if you're going to give him a 77, then Miles should have been a 73. But I digress. Like, the quarterbacks that are being created right now are finding themselves, or they're not finding anything. They're being told, like, you guys might not want to hear it, but you're not going to have anywhere to go. Like, the landscape of the league right now, there's been 15 quarterbacks drafted in the last 5 years that are good, better than you, and under the age of 24. So, like, there's not even that many teams out there that would even consider drafting a quarterback, right? And so I go on this little tirade, this little rant here, largely because of the amount of chatter that I hear from college series prospects about RFL pro players. Smitty, I'm not comparing the two. If I was comparing the two equally, I would tell you they both should have been a 77. I'm telling you, Calvin Poole should have been 4 overalls better than Miles. He should have been. He should have been 4 overall better. But he was 7, and that's nonsense. Doesn't matter. Who cares? You're the only one who thinks that. Like, I literally think everyone agreed that the disparity between the two was wild. But the college series quarterbacks, guys, when you are trash talking in Discord to a guy that's already in the RFL, I think you've lost a little perspective. Like, when you're trash talking a guy who's already there and starting, mind you, which you might never do. Let's be clear. You might never do. I think you're already astray. And so I notice it. I don't know if other GMs care. And I try to be like a man of the people a little bit. Like, I know I say some stuff. And that's probably part of the reason why a lot of you love me. And it's probably a part of the reason why some of you hate me. But the reality is, it's a lot of it, most of it is for your own good. And it's just simple, hard truth. And I don't care whether you want to hear it or not. It's the reality of the situation. And the sooner you accept it, the better off you're going to be. And so when you are a quarterback at the University of Miami, a school that has historically done absolutely donkey to provide talented quarterback play, I almost said offensive play, but there's a couple good players offensively out of the University of Miami. There's really one outside of the offensive line. Shout out to you, Hodge. I don't think there's a single blue blood school in the RFL College Series that has historically put out trash at the offensive position. I mean, like, listen, you can argue all you want. And Amir, he knows he's my guy. I honestly think Amir Williams is the greatest running back that the college series ever saw. I don't mean any disrespect, Hodge, but what we were watching Amir do was crazy. So, okay. This all stems from in the Discord, in the chat, watching, I think it was the Tigers game the other day. Okay. Now I've got my own opinions about the Tigers and some of their rookies. And I have an opinion about the Tigers moving Reese Goodell from safety back to linebacker when he was voted as a top 100 RFL player after dominating as a safety last year. I don't like that move, but I can understand it a little bit because it gives a guy like Cam Johnson an opportunity to step in as a rookie and make plays. And in week one, Cam Johnson had an interception, but also in week one, Cam Johnson got absolutely tooled by the Explorers wide receivers. But I get it. Like, I can understand the thought process when you want to do that. I might not like it, but I can understand it and respect it. And it is what it is. But what I cannot tolerate is a quarterback at we have no good offensive talent university disrespecting and ridiculing the performance of a rookie on a team that might make the playoffs. Like, there's, like, I don't even know who has. What is the thought process? I forget who it was. Michael Blunt, right? Michael Blunt had a rough play or a rough couple plays in the Tigers game. And I've never heard of you, quarterback, ridiculing. And so, again, I wasn't anticipating this being what it is at this point. But come on. Like, let's go back here. And I joke and I say, you know, we've got no good offensive talent university. Let's just take a look at what the University of Miami has put out in terms of quarterbacks in the last 5 years. Okay. And if you want to go get your popcorn or go fix yourself a drink, now's the time to do it, because chances are the names that I'm about to give you, you've never even heard of, or you completely forgot about because they're irrelevant. You want to go back to the College Series 2? Okay, great. DJ White. No, sorry about your luck. Not in the RFL. College Series 3, College Series 4. Kadarius Polk. High expectations, low return. 2 years as a starter. See you later. I think he's selling cell phones at your local mall. Okay. Dorian Chavis, mentioned him earlier. He's now on the Barons. He probably won't start ever. And if he does, it's an in situation. And then College Series 6. You've got Eric Alcorn. He had so much success at Miami, he left. He's not even there anymore. He went to Utah, where all quarterbacks go to thrive. And now here we are, we find ourselves in College Series 7 with Dante Taylor. Congratulations, Dante Taylor. This is the most run, this is the most pub that you're going to get. This could be it. So when you hear your name called in the 5th round, if you're lucky, because you're probably the 8th or 9th best quarterback in the draft class, one which I already said only had 7 quarterbacks taken all of last year. Guess what happens if you're QB 8 and we only draft 7? You're an Amazon delivery driver. And maybe Calvin Poole will let you borrow his jersey. And so, Michael Blunt, if you're out there, if you're listening, if you're watching, let it go, dude. It's no big deal. Everybody has their ups and downs in the RFL. Everybody has them. But when you've got guys that might never take a snap in the RFL, not cool. Dante Taylor. I'd like to say that I'll probably never forget that name now because I just went on a rant about it for 15 minutes. But the reality is, I'll probably forget that name in like 2 weeks. Just like I forgot DJ White and I forgot Kadarius Polk. And I never even knew Eric Alcorn. Right? I mean, it is what it is. You guys can say relax all you want. It is what it is. If you don't want to hear this, then talk to your boys. And this is, I mean, CP is one of the best safeties in the league. Hodge is one of the best running backs in the league. Lito is one of the best DBs in the league. And not just that, forget about how good they are for the league in the league. They're even better for the league than they are in the league. For whatever Lito might give you on the field, he gives you way more, and he gives us way more off the field. Same thing with CP, same thing with Hodge. Those guys have earned it. I mean, look at it. Where is it? Oh, I missed it. Yeah, I mean, here's CP right here. We now have confirmation. Right? Like I don't want to say there's a right way and a wrong way to go about your time. But when your time hasn't even started, guys, college series doesn't mean your time started. Because if you ball out in college and then you get drafted in the 6th round, guess what happens? You probably leave the league. And that's frustrating for you. It's frustrating for us. It's frustrating for everybody. So I just wanted to take this moment. This was more so about like guys that are rookies in the league are going to go through struggles. I mean, I'm going to see it this year with Ajon Grant. I'm going to see it this year with Steve Washington. I saw it last year with Miles McCain, right? Like there's guys that go through struggles, especially on the defensive side of the ball in a pass heavy league this year. Come on. So that's my 2 cents on that. You guys know how I feel. The college series is a primer, but I say this annually. If you're looking to have success in the RFL, which is the league, right? Like ask Lido, ask CP, ask Perk, ask Hodge, ask QPOC, the guys who had unbelievable success in college. Ask them if they preferred their time in college or if they prefer their time now in the RFL. I'll save you the trouble. They would all say that this is better. This is what it's about. And for those guys who put in the work on and off the field, again, there's not many guys out there that put in more time and effort off the field. Guys like CC, I see you here, Perk, CP, QPOC. I mean, come on, man. I'm not disrespectful. I'm giving you your shine. Listen, man, I'll even give you your shine here. Don't call me out. Don't call me out because I'll take this away from you real quick. I'll take this away from you real quick. You didn't even know you were my week 2 boomer. You didn't even know. 10 catches, $176, 4 tutties. You want to call me disrespectful? You weren't disrespecting a rookie as a 9th round pick. Right? So shout out to QPOC. Indeed, all eyes on him in week 2. 10 catches, 176 yards, 4 touchdowns, 18 catches and 5 touchdowns on the season. That's wrong. I know we talked about this earlier. I wrote that wrong. It wasn't yards and receptions are both second in the RFL. So shout out to you, QPOC. Keep up the good work, man. I mean, that's a phenomenal week. That's a phenomenal week. What do you say? I know what you're talking about, QPOC. I know. All right. So unfortunately, this is the part where QPOC might want to cover his ears and put his earmuffs on, because whenever I talk about a busta, he's going to call me disrespectful. The reality of the situation is, as long as you put up numbers, you don't have to worry about it. At least now I know who my busta is going to be if he goes out one week and gets 1 catch for 10 yards and no touchdowns. Wink, wink. Could it be you, QPOC? Nah. Love you, buddy. Okay, so shout out to QPOC here for the boomer of the week. I've said this on last week's show to you guys as well. If you have someone that you think balled out and you would like to see them discussed as a boomer for the week, just send me a DM and be like, hey, check out this guy. Hey, did you see this game? And I can put together a quick little graphic and we can get some additional boomers for you guys. But unfortunately, with every boomer comes a busta, and This week, it's not an individual person. It's the entire roster of the Oklahoma City Bisons. Thank you for showing up. The team is now 0-2 on the year. They scored 3 points in 2 games. Miles Brock has more sacks this year than the Oklahoma City Bisons have points. Miles Brock has more sacks than this team has points. They lost 40-0 to the St. Louis Aviators, a team that got rid of their quarterback and didn't know what they were going to get from the incumbent quarterback. This has to be a wake-up call. I mean, I don't know what to think. I like this team, but they've got to turn it around fast because 40-0 is really bad. They're 0-2. Take a quick peek at the schedule. Right, like they're 0-2 on the year. This week they've got the Celtic Tigers, right? So the Celtic Tigers, that could be 0-3. Then they've got the Bulls. That could be 0-4. They've got the Cougars. That could be 0-5. The Desperados, 0-6. The Elks, maybe they get a win there. Then they got the Miners. I mean, they'll probably get a win there because well, no, we're at home. We'll win that game. We're at home. Then they got the Bulldogs. Then they got a bye. Then they got the Red Dragons, the Black Knights. I mean, this is a hard. The Oklahoma City Bisons might be on the clock. The Oklahoma City Bisons might literally be on the clock. And with the first pick in the 2026 RFL draft, the Oklahoma City Bisons select. Who you got? Dante Taylor? So I think that the Bisons have got to do something. They've got to do something fast. Otherwise, this could get ugly. This could get ugly for them really quick. And I don't know how they stop it. We'll see. But I'm going to take a quick peek at the chat, guys. I'm going to get you out of here. Anything crazy going on in here that I might have missed? You guys just going back and forth with each other. Yeah, I think we're pretty good. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Obviously, I know it was difficult given the postponement of the game, so I was able to go a little bit longer than normal tonight, obviously, because we didn't have that 9:00 game. Next week, we should be back to your normally scheduled 6 p.m. Eastern time. And then we'll roll into the 7:00 game, and then you'll have the 9:00 game as well. So, again, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, head coach, and general manager of the Sacramento Miners, Chris Dunn. If you did not already, please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, do all that fun stuff. And enjoy the games this week. More than anything, enjoy the games. We've got premier games all day, all night tomorrow. We've got premier games all night on Thursday. And then we've got the live broadcast to wrap out week 3 on Friday. And then don't forget Saturday night, the RFL podcast will take you into week 4. So as always, enjoy the games this week, and I will talk to you guys soon. Take care, everybody.